يا يحيى خذ الكتاب بقوة وآتيناه الحكم صبيا إذ قال الله يا عيسى إني متوفيك ورافعك إلي محمد رسول الله.
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا. من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له. وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. اللهم صل وسلم وبارك عليه وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. We're in Surat Al-Kahf, this beautiful surah that gives the light in the midst of the darknesses of this life and the trials of this life, makes it very clear of how to act and how to believe and how to look at things. It's very important when a person is given the proper understanding of this life and whatever it contains, so that a person is able to know how to walk and how to make decisions and how to do all kinds of things. Otherwise, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala stated in the Quran, that human beings are in loss. إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر. Except those who believe and do righteous good deeds, and they enjoy what is right and what is true, and what is patience. They remind one another of being patient with what they know of the truth. So the Quran gives the matter very clear to us for us to act accordingly. We reached verse number 47 from Surat Al-Kahf that takes us after the story of the two companions. One was rich and one was poor, and we talked about it. Then verses that talks about some of the scenes of the day of reckoning, of the day of Al-Qiyamah, the resurrection, and how when we see an example in this life, that we see it repeated in this life, then it takes us to the hereafter, how exactly the outcome of these actions, what people would be in the day of judgment as a result of these actions. So we have an idea clearly with things in this life and then how these things will be in the hereafter, so that now we act upon what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants from us, because the matter is a repeated one. And also it shows that the reality of this life and the shaitan and iblis and what his role in this life and things of that nature. So let's start inshallah ta'ala with verse number 47. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, ويوم نسير الجبال وترى الأرض بارزة وحشرناهم فلم نغادر منهم أحدا. And warn of the day when we will remove the mountains and you will see the earth prominent, and we will gather them and not leave behind from them anyone. The previous verse was about the reality of these things that are adornment of this life. Wealth and offsprings are adornment of this life, and al-baqiyatu salihat. It talked about the enduring righteousness, the things that would stay forever. And that's where the heart should be attached to. It's better for the person in rewards, and this is the best hope. When the person's hope is attached to the hereafter, not to this limited life, then the verses then takes us to the hereafter. What is the real hope? Where is the outcome and the consequences of actions? وَيَوْمَ نُسَيِّرُ الْجِبَالِ, the day of judgment, the day when the mountains will be moved from its place. These mighty mountains on the face of earth, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will destroy it in the day of judgment. And it's mentioned in more than one verse in the Quran. وَتَرَى الْأَرْضَ بَارِزَةً, and you would see the earth bariza. Bariza means there is no sign of anything whatsoever. That is without any level of things, without any provisions or anything that people owned or buildings or all these signs of life and goodness, all of that will vanish. You see the earth prominent. And al-buruz is when something appears, when something becomes clear. So now when something is clear sometimes, or some things in this earth is hidden, nobody has the ability to see what's on the face of earth. When you stand on the face of earth, you don't see it all. There's walls, there's caves, there are mountains. All of that will be leveled out. وَحَشَرْنَاهُمْ, and we will gather them. Human beings, all of them, from the beginning to the end, will be gathered. فَلَمْ نُغَادِرْ مِنْهُمْ أَحَدًا, none will escape. None will be missed. No one will be late. No one would have a choice because in the day of judgment, now it's Darul Jaza, it's the place of recompense. The place of actions where you had a choice was in this life. But in the hereafter, there's no choice. Everybody is being resurrected, everyone is being gathered in one place, and then one stage after the other is going to be there. As many verses of the Quran talks about it, the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, and this is how the human beings will be, and therefore they need to take heed and to take decisions and to be steadfast upon the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. وَحَشَرْنَاهُمْ فَلَمْ نُغَادِرْ مِنْهُمْ أَحَدًا. No one will be missed whatsoever in the day of judgment. Then the next verse, وَعُرِضُوا عَلَى رَبِّكَ صَفًّا لَقَدْ جِئْتُمُونَا كَمَا خَلَقْنَاكُمْ أَوَّلَ مَرَّةٍ بَلْ زَعَمْتُمْ أَن لَّن نَّجْعَلَ لَكُم مَّوْعِدًا. And they will be presented before your Lord in rows. And he will say, you have certainly come to us just as we created you the first time. But you claimed that we would never make for you an appointment. وَعُرِضُوا عَلَى رَبِّكَ. So the first and the last will be resurrected. And when we reflect upon this meaning, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave one of the names of the day of Al-Qiyamah, is يوم التلاق. It's the day of when people meet and people will meet one another. Adam alayhi salam will meet the last of his offsprings. All humanity will be present on the face place in the same place. People will meet their actions, they will see their actions. The people, those who acted upon the same thing, they will be together. It doesn't matter whether it's time or place. When people live on the face of earth, they associate themselves or they ally themselves with all kinds of relationships that will be severed in the day of judgment based on patriotism, nationalism, color of their skin, all of these type of affiliations that they have. All of that is of no significance whatsoever in the day of judgment, except هو الذي خلقكم فمنكم كافر ومنكم مؤمن. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created you. Some of you are disbelievers, some of you are believers. So people will be according to their actions. They will be resurrected according to their actions in the day of judgment. So they will be presented. وَعُرِضُوا عَلَى رَبِّكَ صَفًّا. No one will escape. Everybody's there and they will be presented. وَعُرِضُوا. Al-ard is when something is being presented without being hidden whatsoever. عَلَى رَبِّكَ, before your Lord. صَفًّا, in rows. So no one is missing, no one has a choice. لَقَدْ جِئْتُمُونَا كَمَا خَلَقْنَاكُمْ أَوَّلَ مَرَّةٍ. It will be said to them, you indeed, لَقَدْ, indeed, definitely, no doubt. جِئْتُمُونَا, جَاء means come. You came to us. You have certainly come to us. Right? Everybody will come to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Everyone will return to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is the belief in the day of judgment. كَمَا خَلَقْنَاكُمْ أَوَّلَ مَرَّةٍ. Exactly the same as we created you the first time. Without any clothes on, being not circumcised, as the Prophet ﷺ said, just in the original creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And no one would be looking at one another. Why? Because they are in complete disarray, confused, worried about their own selves, whether they're going to be among the people of Jannah or the hellfire. This is the real seriousness of things. So no one is escaped whatsoever. So لَقَدْ جِئْتُمُونَا كَمَا خَلَقْنَاكُمْ أَوَّلَ مَرَّةٍ. So all of the wealth that was mentioned before, all of your belongings and all of the things that people used to act arrogantly because of it in this life, they lose all of this. Everybody will be the same. It's like when people go for Hajj, for example, they're all wearing the same thing. No one can really distinguish the poor from the rich. بَلْ زَعَمْتُمْ أَلَّن نَّجْعَلَ لَكُمْ مَوْعِدًا. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala addressing the disbelievers, those who claim that they will not have an appointment in the day of judgment. They thought that this worldly life is the end of it. So they get their desires fulfilled in it in the way they desire. They do whatever they want in this life, and it's no commands from Allah, no things for them to be forbidden from doing. And that's why the ibadah to Allah, the worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, is to obey the creator of the heavens and the earth. And not just to claim that they're righteous or religious, but then when it comes to the commands of Allah, as I heard one person was saying, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forbade usury, for example, but when they see there's benefit from it, they would just deal with it. Then what's that, a religion? This is someone that is worshipping their own desires. They're not worshipping the creator of the heavens and the earth. So they thought that there's not going to be an appointment time, that appointing time for each and everyone. Maw'id. Al maw'id is when you have a set time that everybody will meet the Lord subhanahu wa ta'ala and their actions. And they would see the outcome. Everything is written, everything is recorded. That's why the next verse talks about one of these scenes in the day of Al-Qiyamah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, ووضع الكتاب فترى المجرمين مشفقين مما فيه ويقولون يا ويلتنا ما لهذا الكتاب لا يغادر صغيرة ولا كبيرة إلا أحصاها ووجدوا ما عملوا حاضرا ولا يظلم ربك أحدا, which means, and the record of deeds will be placed open, and you will see the criminals fearful of that within it, and they will say, oh, woe to us! What is this book that leaves nothing small or great except that it has enumerated it? And they will find what they did present before them, and your Lord does injustice to no one. So here now, the scene of the book of deeds, وَوُضِعَ الْكِتَابِ, the record of deeds, the book of deeds will be placed. And the meaning of وُضِعَ الْكِتَابِ, it will be placed open. People will receive their books, as it's stated in many verses in the Qur'an. For the believers, they receive it with their right hands. And for the disbelievers, they receive it with their left hands. And this is the book of deeds. Nothing is missing. All of the deeds that was done in this life. So in this life, the worldly life that we live in, the recording of our books is being happening at the moment that we are still alive. Everything that we do is recorded. The angels, two angels with a person, they don't leave him. One on the right, one on the left, recording everything, the good deeds and the bad deeds. And in the day of judgment, people will see their book. If a person repents to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the bad deeds will be wiped away. So, and it will be said to the people, as we heard this verse before, in Surah Al-Isra, اقرأ كتابك كفى بنفسك اليوم عليك حسيبا, that it will be said, read your book. It's sufficient for you to reckon yourself. You will see it yourself. You see what you did, what you earned in this life. So the book of deeds will be put open. فَتَرَى الْمُجْرِمِينَ. Imagine now. You would see the mujrimeen, the criminal ones, disbelievers, those who disobeyed Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the sinful ones, those who died without repenting to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. مُشْفِقِينَ مِمَّا فِي. مُشْفِقِين, الشفقة or al-ishfaq here is, it says fearful, but it's mixture of fear and grieve. Fearful because they know what they're going to be in, which is the hellfire. They know what's in their book of deeds, nothing but disbelief, associating partners with Allah, sins. So it's the fear of what's coming ahead, the grief and the sadness where there's no place and there's no time to fix it. وَيَقُولُونَ, and they would say, يَا وَيْلَتَنَا, woe to us. Al-wayl, whether it's a valley in the hellfire or it's an expression that shows that the person is regretful, woe to oneself. مَا لِهَذَا الْكِتَابِ, what's the matter with this book? That what's this book? لا يغادر صغيرة ولا كبيرة إلا أحصاها. لا يغادر. And this is negation with exception. That means this is so exclusive. It does not leave anything, whether it's small or great, unless it's أحصاها. It's there. It's included. Nothing is missing whatsoever. Whether it's the smallest deed, whether it's a word of mouth, or any action, whether it's small or big, unless it's present in this book. وَوَجَدُوا مَا عَمِلُوا حَاضِرًا. What's in this book? They found what they've earned, what they've done, present in front of them. Their actions, the book is basically the book of actions. We are nothing at the end but actions. What do we take from this life? What is our purpose on the face of earth? Is actions. This is not the place of the reward or punishment. This is the place of actions. We are being tested in this life. So the real successful one, as it's mentioned in the previous verses, is those who seek in the rewards from Allah constantly. They don't waste anything in their life, even their sleep, even in their relationships and their food and drink, whatever, even matters of goodness. They're always seeking rewards from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, establishing the essence of the ubudiyyah, the obedience to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because everything is recorded. And these criminal ones, they would say woe to themselves, but it's too late. There's of no benefit whatsoever. And they would see what they've earned present, hadiran, present. It's there, because that's the reward of the punishment will be accordingly. وَلَا يَظْلِمُ رَبُّكَ أَحَدًا. Your Lord would never treat anyone with injustice, because this is now, again, this is your book, this is your actions. Nothing will be added in there that you didn't earn. Nothing will be omitted that you did or you miss. No one will miss any rewards that they did for the sake of Allah. Everything is there according to one's action. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the most just. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make us among those who receive their book of deeds with the right hands, and those who would be happy when they receive the book of deeds, and they would have the ultimate and the everlasting win. We'll continue inshallah ta'ala after the break of how the reality of this life and in the hereafter as explained in these verses in Surah Al-Kahf. So stay with us inshallah.
محمد رسول الله محمد رسول الله.
Alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala Rasulullah. Welcome back. And with the verses in Surah Al-Kahf from 47, and we're going through, hopefully, inshallah ta'ala, till verse number 54. And after seeing some of the scenes of the Day of Judgment, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says about the angels and Adam and Iblis. Verse number 50. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَإِذْ قُلْنَا لِلْمَلَائِكَةِ اسْجُدُوا لِآدَمَ فَسَجَدُوا إِلَّا إِبْلِيسَ كَانَ مِنَ الْجِنِّ فَفَسَقَ عَنْ أَمْرِ رَبِّهِ أَفَتَتَّخِذُونَهُ وَذُرِّيَّتَهُ أَوْلِيَاءَ مِنْ دُونِي وَهُمْ لَكُمْ عَدُوٌّ بِئْسَ لِلظَّالِمِينَ بَدَلًا. And mention when we said to the angels, prostrate to Adam, and they prostrated, except for Iblis. He was of the jinn and departed from the command of his Lord. Then will you take him and his descendants as allies other than me, while they are enemies to you? Wretched it is for the wrongdoers as an exchange. وَإِذْ, every time we see وَإِذْ in the Qur'an, as if it gives the meaning, and remember. And of course, and mention, that means as if you see it, because this is something that happened in the past. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said to the angels, وَإِذْ قُلْنَا لِلْمَلَائِكَةِ, when we said to the angels, اسْجُدُوا لِآدَمَ, make sujood to Adam, prostrate to Adam. This is the command of Allah. The sujood is ibadah. When a human being makes sujood, we only make sujood to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But the command of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to the angels to make sujood to Adam, this is the sujood of honoring Adam alayhi salam. But regardless, this is the command of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So, اسجدوا لآدم فسجدوا. The angels, they immediately submitted themselves. They don't have a choice but to obey the commands of the Lord. فسجدوا إلا إبليس, except Iblis. Iblis is a specific one here. This is the father of all of the jinn. Iblis, he refused, and he's not from the angels, but he was in the companionship of the angels. إلا إبليس كان من الجن, he was from the jinn, so he's not. This is a clear proof that Iblis was not from the angels, he was from the jinn. They had a choice. So he was from the jinn. فَفَسَقَ عَنْ أَمْرِ رَبِّهِ, he rebelled against the command of his Lord, departed from the command of his Lord. And al-fusuq is when someone rebels against the command of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Literally comes from the meaning of being departed or left something, like in the case of a flower, or the bud leaves the stem. So he فَسَقَ عَنْ أَمْرِ رَبِّهِ. That's why al-fasiq is the disobedient to Allah, because he renegated away from the commands of Allah. So this is the reality of Iblis. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, admonishing the believers and the human beings in general, أَفَتَتَّخِذُونَهُ وَذُرِّيَّتَهُ أَوْلِيَاءَ مِن دُونِي وَهُمْ لَكُمْ عَدُوٌّ. Would you take him and the descendants of Iblis and his descendants, would you take them as awliya, as your allies, protectors, and listen to his whispers and to his ways, min duni, from other than Allah, وَهُمْ لَكُمْ عَدُوٌّ, and they are enemies to you? How foolish it is. If a human being, he takes his enemy as an ally, what would other human beings call that individual? The least is that he's insane, or he's someone that is foolish. because the enemy, he wants to destroy him. The enemy doesn't want good for him, and he would take him one step after the other. And this is how the relationship between Iblis and many of the human beings. They took Iblis as an ally besides Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Why? Because if they turn away from the wahy, what's between the people and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the revelation of Allah. The Qur'an is the thing between us and Allah, as the Prophet ﷺ said. And Shaitan, Iblis, his way is for people to turn away from the revelation of Allah and to follow their desires, to follow people, to follow whatever, as long as they don't follow the revelation from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So whoever takes Iblis as a wali, even if they don't declare that openly, it's basically those who turn away from the truth. If they turn away from the truth, that means Iblis is their leader, because he would adorn for them what they think. And people would think, oh, I think this way, I see this way. And this poor person doesn't really recognize the ways of Iblis in beautifying the evil to them. So they take Iblis as an ally, wali, protector, and means of help besides Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, while they are their enemies. So don't take your enemies as allies, right? You take precautions, you take measures to protect yourself from your enemies. بِئْسَ لِلظَّالِمِينَ بَدَّلًا. What a worst state that is for the zalimeen, for the wrongdoers, when they do that exchanging the wilaya and the protection and the help from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to seek that instead from Iblis, the one that will ruin them and lead them to their everlasting punishment in the hereafter. And when people don't see it, because as we know, as the verses of the Qur'an stated, when Iblis refused to make sujood to Adam and he asked Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give him the means to live till the day of judgment, and the job of Iblis is to deviate the human beings, to come to them from all directions, to make sure that they stay in the state of disbelief. And if he's not able to get them to be disbelievers, at least to be sinners, to be upon bid'ah innovations in the deen, to take whatever he can so that they will be among the people of the hellfire. He took that upon himself, and Iblis is still alive, and he's going to be alive till the day of judgment, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant him this. And in the day of judgment, he will be in the hellfire forever. And he will take those who are with him to the hellfire. So what a worst exchange there is. Instead of having Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as their ally and to turn to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alone, they turn to Iblis. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says about the jinn and mankind and everyone, ما أشهدتهم خلق السماوات والأرض ولا خلق أنفسهم وما كنت متخذ المضلين عضدا. I did not make them witness to the creation of the heavens and the earth, or to the creation of themselves, and I would not have taken them as guiders, as assistants. ما أشهدتهم خلق السماوات والأرض. This is the reality of the human beings and the jinn. So they're not all that. Why would you take the jinn as allies when they did not even witness the creation of the heavens and the earth? They don't have any power whatsoever. They cannot help you. They will distance themselves from you in the day of judgment, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala stated that in the Quran, also in more than one place. So this is as means of showing clearly who is the one that we ought to take as the wali. Allahu waliyyu alladhina amanu. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the wali, is the protector of those who believe. Because the believers, they would never take other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as a protector, as a wali. And for those who took Iblis as a wali or a helper or an ally, why would they do that when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did not make them even witness the creation of the heavens and the earth? And the one that created the heavens and the earth is the one that ought to be for the hearts to be attached to and to worship him alone. وَلَا خَلْقَ أَنفُسِهِمْ. Not even the creation of their own selves. We did not witness our own creation. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created each and every one of us in the womb of our mothers, we didn't see that happening. We were not aware of things. وَلَا خَلْقَ أَنفُسِهِمْ وَمَا كُنْتُ مُتَّخِذَ الْمُضِلِّينَ عَضُدًا. And I would not have taken the misguiders as assistants. وَمَا كُنْتُ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would never, ever. This does not befit the majesty and the greatness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that He would take the misguiders, al-mudillin, those who misguided themselves by their evil actions. He would take them as adud, and al-adud is the one that helps from the place on the shoulder. This is how a person would seek the help. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not take from these evil ones helpers, and He does not take from the righteous ones as helpers also, but it shows these ones that lead people astray, worshipping other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they're not helpers of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They're ruined, so therefore they ruin the life of others too. So all of these things is for the human beings to reflect upon these verses and to think, why would they continue to associate partners with Allah? Why would they have their hearts attached to paganism, the way of Iblis, shaitan, these false religions, these things that cause them to worship other than Allah and so on? This is all means of destruction of oneself. And that's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, after that, when takes us back again to the day of judgment, in the next verse, verse number 52, he says, وَيَوْمَ يَقُولُ نَادُوا شُرَكَائِيَ الَّذِينَ زَعَمْتُمْ فَدَعَوْهُمْ فَلَمْ يَسْتَجِيبُوا لَهُمْ وَجَعَلْنَا بَيْنَهُمْ مَوْبِقًا. And warn of the day when he will say, call my partners, whom you claimed. They will invoke them, but they will not respond to them. And we will put between them a valley of destruction. وَيَوْمَ يَقُولُ نَادُوا شُرَكَائِي. On the day, as it's mentioned in the beginning of the set of verses, وَيَوْمَ نُسَيِّرُ الْجِبَالِ. On the day when the mountains, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will make it move from its place, which is the day of resurrection. So also this is the day of resurrection. وَيَوْمَ يَقُولُ. And on the day when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would say, and that's in itself is warning. Warn them from the day when it will be said, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will say to the people, those who associated partners with Allah, نادوا شركائي الذين زعمتم. Call upon these partners that you claim that they are my partners. Call them. And as we see, for example, the example in Surat Al-Ma'idah, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will ask Isa, Jesus the son of Mary, أنت قلت للناس اتخذوني وأمي إلهين من دون الله. Have you ever said to the people that take me and my mother as gods besides Allah, to worship him besides Allah? And the verses clearly state that he would distance himself from that. He never told them anything of this. He called them and he told them to worship only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the one in the heavens. So the same thing, they will be told, call upon these partners that you claimed that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has. الَّذِينَ زَعَمْتُمْ فَدَعَوْهُمْ فَلَمْ يَسْتَجِيبُوا لَهُمْ. They will be left to call them, but they would never reply to them. They can't reply to them. They are all slaves of Allah. They cannot do anything except by the permission of Allah. They don't have a choice whatsoever. فَلَمْ يَسْتَجِيبُوا لَهُمْ. As they did not made istijaba also for them in this worldly life. They never replied to them. They never answered them in this worldly life. It was the ways of Iblis and Shaitan unto the people to think that their prayers are heard when they call other than Allah, when they call a human being or an image of an idol or any of that. فَلَمْ يَسْتَجِيبُوا لَهُمْ وَجَعَلْنَا بَيْنَهُمْ مَوْبِقًا. And there was a destruction, mawbiqa meaning destruction between them and these partners or these idols that they worshipped besides Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There was a valley of destruction. That means they will all be destroyed and they will be all thrown into the fire as a result of their actions of associating partners with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that's why would someone call upon something that would never hear them, would never benefit them, like those who go to the dead, like those who go to the graves, and they ask them besides Allah, or they ask them to ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for them. All of that is nonsense. This is all associating partners with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They would never respond to them. They're departed from this life. So this is all to show how things will be in the day of judgment and how the regret and the misery of those who associated partners with Allah will be in the day of resurrection, and how they were led by Iblis, by Shaitan, and in reality they're worshipping Iblis. Those who worship other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they are in reality worshipping Iblis. And Iblis, as long as people worship other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it doesn't matter to him. أَلَمْ أَعَدْ إِلَيْكُمْ يَا بَنِي آدَمَ أَلَّا تَعْبُدُوا الشَّيْطَانِ. As Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will say to the people in the day of resurrection, didn't I take the covenant from you that you don't worship the shaitan? وَأَنْ يَعْبُدُونِي هَذَا صِرَاطٌ مُسْتَقِيمٌ. And worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alone. This is the straight path. So more details of what is going to be in the day of resurrection, when people will call upon these partners that they took besides Allah, but they would never respond. And they would if they would call them even in this life forever, they would never respond to them. All of that was nonsense. They created these own thoughts into their own minds without any basis to it whatsoever, and it becomes means of their own destruction. We'll continue, inshallah ta'ala, with what's left from this segment and the ways and the scenes of reckoning in the Day of Judgment. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect us from evil and from the hellfire, and to make us among those who are holding fast to the deen of Allah. So we'll continue, inshallah ta'ala, right after the break. So stay with us, inshallah.
محمد رسول الله محمد رسول الله
Alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala Rasulillah. Welcome back, and with the last two verses, 53 and 54 in Surat Al-Kahf, and one verse lead to the other. And these are all scenes of the day of reckoning, the day of resurrection, and how people will see their actions, how people will be rewarded, punished, and the effect of the evil actions in their life. And the worst of all sins, when people associate partners with Allah, disbelieve in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, worship other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the creator of the heavens. So verse number 53, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَرَأَى الْمُجْرِمُونَ النَّارَ فَظَنُّوا أَنَّهُمْ مُوَاقِعُوهَا وَلَمْ يَجِدُوا عَنْهَا مَصْرِفًا. And the criminals will see the fire and will be certain that they are to fall therein, and they will not find from it a way elsewhere. وَرَأَى الْمُجْرِمُونَ النَّارَ. Now this is the time when the evildoers, the criminals, the disbelievers, they will see the fire. Those who disbelieved in it, imagine how would their state be when they see it. They used to disbelieve in it. They used to make mockery of it. And now they see it with their own eyes, not just seeing it, but they will be thrown in it. وَرَأَى الْمُجْرِمُونَ النَّارَ. Just something to reflect upon. When they see the fire, this fire that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best how mighty and how powerful and how great that is. And as the Prophet ﷺ, he said that the level of the fire in it is 69 times more than the intensity of it in this world. And people will be created in such a way that they would be able to live in the fire forever. And as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, كُلَّمَا نَضِجَتْ جُلُودُهُمْ بَدَّلْنَاهُمْ جُلُودًا غَيْرَهَا لِيَذُوقُوا الْعَذَابِ. Every time their skin become cooked, burned, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would replace their skin with other skin for them to taste the punishment. So it's a continuous punishment, continuous pain. عذاب أليم, عذاب عظيم, عذاب مهين. As it's stated in the Qur'an, painful punishment, great punishment, humiliating punishment, all kinds of disgrace, physical punishment and non-physical punishment, and they will be in it forever. No exit whatsoever, no way for them to leave it whatsoever. And the Qur'an states this in many different verses. Why all of that is because of their own evil actions, and they have been warned multiple times, many times. And they continue to be what? Mujrimun. That's what made them deserve to be in hellfire. Al-Mujrim is the criminal, is the one that commit evil and they don't repent to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and they rebel against the commands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and associate partners with Allah. There's nothing more of a criminal act than to associate partners with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the creator of all things. So, وَرَأَى الْمُجْرِمُونَ النَّارَ فَظَنُّوا أَنَّهُمْ مُوَاقِعُوهَا. ظَنُّ here, الظَّن is with the meaning of certainty. And the word الظَّن is a word that has different meanings according to the context of things. So sometimes it can come into the meaning of thinking or doubt or so, and sometimes it comes into the meaning of certainty. So when the mujrimun, they see the fire, they know with certainty that they will be among the people of the hellfire. They will be thrown into the hellfire. And as some said in the tafsir and so on, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best how long they will see it before they are thrown in it. And that's by itself is punishment. They will see the hellfire, and they will see how severe is the punishment, and they would see that they would be in it forever. Some said 40 years. Allah knows best. Of course, there's no clear, authentic evidences to this. But imagine someone is seeing, looking at the place of their punishment. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect us from the hellfire. They will see it, for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best how long, and then they will be thrown in it. فَظَنُّوا أَنَّهُمْ مُوَاقِعُوهَا. They will be thrown in it. when something falls from above. This is what their place, and they know with certainty that they will be in it. وَلَمْ يَجِدُوا عَنْهَا مَصْرِفًا. They won't find any masrif. They won't find any way elsewhere, any diversion, anything to take them away from it. There's no excuse, there's no actions, there's no dua, there's no crying, there's no weeping, there's no intercessors, nothing whatsoever. Nothing works in the day of judgment. It's nothing but the recompense, the justice of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The mercy of Allah to the believers, and the justice of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala unto the disbelievers. When someone get the reality of these verses, would a person then, how would a person sees how this life is? If someone his entire life lived for 90 years, just being a pure criminal with disbelief, associating partners with Allah, bloodshed, evil spreading on the face of earth. And then at the end, if this is the final abode for such a person, what did they achieve on the face of earth is nothing. And for the believers, if they suffered a great deal their entire life, but then at the end they're saved from such a punishment, this is the real gain, this is the real victory. So the Quran gives us the real understanding of things. Who's victorious in this life? The victorious one in this life is not the one that necessarily gains a temporary victory. The real victorious in this life is the one that is guided so that when they die, they won't be ever punished in the hereafter. They will be among the people of Jannah. This is the real victory. This is the real attainment in this life. وَلَمْ يَجِدُوا عَنْهَا مَصْرِفًا. No masrif, no diversion, no way, no place for them, no means whatsoever. This is for those who will be in our fire forever. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one that is able to do all things. And then after that, where did we get this and how to protect ourselves? A person, when he hears these verses, how can we protect ourselves from the punishment on the hereafter? How can we be among the people of Jannah? How to succeed in this life? Then the next verse gives us this mean by saying in verse number 54, وَلَقَدْ صَرَّفْنَا فِي هَذَا الْقُرْآنِ لِلنَّاسِ مِنْ كُلِّ مَثَلٍ وَكَانَ الْإِنسَانُ أَكْثَرَ شَيْءٍ جَدَلًا. And we have certainly diversified in this Qur'an for the people from every kind of example, but man has ever been most of anything prone to dispute. This is some of the sad realities of many of the human beings. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect us from the evil within our own selves. And this will be continued afterwards, some of the reason why people are not guided. What diverts people away from guidance? The Quran explains that in details so that we really expose what's inside of us and for the person to then rush and to flee to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So here, وَلَقَدْ صَرَّفْنَا. Indeed, no doubt, by Allah. صَرَّفْنَا, we diversified. So many different ways. And that's what صَرَّفْنَا means when it comes to the Quran. Not just one verse that gives the understanding of this life and in the hereafter. Many different ways and many different evidences. Every page in the Quran you would find many different means and many different evidences. The Quran is heavy. Requires for the person to reflect upon it and to see how, for example, in this surah Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talked about this, the reality of this life versus other surahs in the Quran. To look at how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talked about Jannah here versus other surahs in the Quran. Diversified many other meanings in the Quran. The hellfire, the rewards, the punishment, the ways of the believers, the ways of the disbelievers, their characteristics, diversified in the Quran. All kinds of things in this life, the hereafter. وَلَقَدْ صَرَّفْنَا فِي هَذَا الْقُرْآنِ لِلنَّاسِ. For the people. مِنْ كُلِّ مَثَلٍ. For every example that is needed is there in the Quran. And we heard the example of the two, the companions of the garden. How Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned this as an example, as a parable for people to learn from it. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala first divide the matter for people to learn. Min kulli mathal, from every example, from every parable. And as mentioned before, the parable is what the meaning of the parable or the example is. That means the matter is going to be repeated. And we are living one. Everyone in their life, they're living one of these examples. One of these characteristics, whether a person is from the believers or the disbelievers. So when it's mentioned here, the Quran gives us this diversity, these many different evidences for the person to be in state of certainty about what the truth is. And again, and it's always repeated. It's a call for humanity. You won't find the like of this book of Allah, the Quran. No book is the like the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala because it gives it very clear. Many, many examples. If people are talking about the most important thing in their religion, it should not be a word in their book that they have to search for it. It should be the entire book is upon it. And this is how the Quran is. You won't go wrong if you want to know about the Tawheed, the oneness of worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You don't have to search for a verse that gives this meaning. It's all over the Quran. It's from the beginning to the end of it. So all kinds of examples that has been diversified in the Quran. But then if people turn away from the wahy, if people turn away from the revelation from Allah, then the ayah says, وَكَانَ الْإِنسَانُ أَكْثَرَ شَيْءٍ جَدَلًا. The al-insan, the humankind, is the most in when it comes to al-jadal, or when it comes to the disputes. They're always disputing. وَكَانَ الْإِنسَانُ أَكْثَرَ شَيْءٍ جَدَلًا. Disputing about what? The dispute refuting or try to oppose the Quran, the revelation from Allah. Because the Quran does not need disputes, does not need for a person to argue. This is revelation from Allah. Just take it and follow it. But the human beings, when we know this about ourselves, this ayah talks about how human beings are. This is in our nature. So either we reform it so that when it comes to the revelation from Allah, we don't argue. We just learn and listen and we obey. And to avoid the evil arguments, but rather to expose and to convey the truth. And the disbelievers, when they continue to disbelieve, it's because of these false arguments. They dispute, they refute the words of Allah, the truth that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed. And that's why there's a very important principle, extremely important, even for the believers towards one another. We learn in this deen that we have the sources of our evidences, which is the Quran and the authentic Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. This is the sources. This is where we learn and we take benefits from, and we say the verse says this, that means it's this, and this is as a result of that we do this action. So this is the issue of authentication. This is the source. And then there are etiquettes and manners and rules, which is part of the knowledge of how to extract rulings. How to extract rulings from the Quran and the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. We go directly to the source. This is the job of the people of knowledge. So this is knowledge that the people of knowledge, they learn. But then you would find some individuals, they would take the words of men, take the words even of ulama or imma. Instead of taking their words, they will take from their words benefits, and they would try to relate certain things to their words, or since they said that, therefore they mean this, or therefore this is what we learn from it. As the ulama, they say we don't do that with the words of even the people of knowledge. We take the words of the people of knowledge the way it is, and not to argue with one another based on this, but rather to extract the rulings from the Quran and the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. Of course, this is the job of the people of knowledge. So this is a detailed subject, of course, but for someone to say, oh, he said this, that means he means this. Well, what if he doesn't mean that? Right? This is how human beings sometimes or oftentimes they fall into disputes. But when it comes to, this is where the jidal, many of the jidal and the arguments and so on is based on this. Many of those who refuted some of the great words of the people of knowledge is because, oh, they said that means they are this. Who said that they are this? Take their mantuq, take their uttered words. But when it comes to how to extract benefits, this is from the Quran and the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. This is where the ulama, they give us these great benefits and how to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The subject of al-jidal and arguments and disputes and all of that, some of it is good, some of it is evil. But when it comes to the Quran, see in the same verse, this is in the same context. Quran, jadal. Can the Quran be disputed? Can people argue with the book of Allah and the authentic Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ? Of course, that's not permissible whatsoever. And as the Prophet ﷺ, he said in the authentic hadith, مَا ضَلَّ قَوْمٌ بَعْدَ هُدًى كَانُوا عَلَيْهِ إِلَّا أُوتُوا الْجَدَلِ. There's no group of people they deviate after they were guided unless they will be given al-jadal. They will be left to argue. They keep on arguing with one another, constantly arguing, debating with one another, arguing, having enmity towards one another. No actions, just words versus words. Why? Because this is a sign that they have been deviated after they have been guided. That's why Imam Malik and others, the book of Allah, the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, this is what we convey, this is what we learn. If people take it, mashallah, this is good for them. If they don't take it, what's the arguments are for? Unless a person, again, is one to convey the truth. And to know this reality of the human beings, to save ourselves from the punishment of the hellfire, and to follow the revelation from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There are many great benefits, of course, we can learn. The Qur'an never ceases to bring benefits. This is the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make us among those who benefit from what we learn and to act according to the Qur'an and to the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, and to accept our repentance and to make us sincerely return to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with matters of goodness, and to make us all from the people of Jannah. وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
إلا الذين تابوا وأصلحوا وبينوا فأولئك أتوب عليهم وأنا التواب الرحيم.
فادعوا الله مخلصين له الدين ولو كره الكافرون.
يا زكريا إنا نبشرك